Welcome everyone to another incredible Sales Hacker live event. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to let folks roll in. So let's just have a little bit of fun. Go down to your chat box and tell us your name, your role, where you're tuning in from. If you didn't know, I just found this out, but it's National Dessert Day, so maybe pop that in the chat box too. What's your favorite dessert? But we really want to keep this super interactive. So chat with the other attendees. If you have a question for the panelists today, I hope you have lots of questions. We've got a Q&A box. So go ahead, find the Q&A box. Please direct questions to the panelists in the Q&A box. That way they don't get lost in the chat. So let's go ahead. We'll let some more folks roll in. If you're just tuning in, tell us where you're from, your name, your company. And all right, well, today's topic is all about how to optimize your website, make your traffic do more for you. We have got an absolutely incredible panel of experts who are going to talk to us about how to optimize the entire website experience. So personalization, lead routing and qualification, response time, connecting qualified buyers and sellers, you name it. Before we get there, we're going to do a round of introductions. So, Mark, let's go ahead and start with you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. Great to be with you all today. Mark Killens from Drift. I'm the Vice President of Content and Community on the marketing team. Looking forward to the conversation. Drift, we're not going to talk about Drift, I don't think, very much. This is going to be about how to really take your website up a notch. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what Drift is a conversational marketing and sales solution that actually, in fact, will help you personalize the digital buying experience today. So it's a very relevant, top-of-mind topic for us at Drift. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Mark. Eric, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Sam. And yeah, Mark, I might talk about Drift. So you never know. My name is Eric Mckinnon. I'm a Senior Director of Demand Generation at Refine Labs. We're a demand generation agency, if you want to call us that. Recovering startup entrepreneur, career digital marketer. Been in this space since I had my own .com boom company running banner ads with Flycast and CMGI back in 1998. Oh my goodness. In the past 5 years, doing a lot of hands-on demand gen work in agencies as a consultant, startups, all the way to enterprise, led paid media strategy at SAP, and then moved back down to the Series B kind of startup funded level at a company called Thought Exchange before I made the jump to Refine Labs at the start of this year. So yeah, here we are. It's really nice to be a part of this, and I'm excited to chat about optimization with you folks.
Thanks so much, Eric. Pete, would love to hear from you.
Thanks, Sam. So Pete Lorenko, I head up demand generation for Alice, B2B smart gifting platform. We'll just kind of leave it at that. Prior to Alice, spent a lot of time at a lot of bigger organizations, Avid Technology, EMC, Iron Mountain, to name a few. And yeah, excited. Let's jump in.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your time, your wisdom with us today. For any folks who have just rolled in, go ahead, introduce yourself in the chat, and use the Q&A as we go to give us some questions. We'll pull them in as we go. I'm very excited to jump into this conversation. I think it makes sense for us to kick this off with the problem that we kind of mentioned in before, which is that marketers are only seeing a conversion rate of 2 to 5%. Why is that? What are some of the things that marketers are getting wrong? I think it'd be cool to talk about that before you get into the solution. So, Eric, let's start with you. What do you think?
What do I think? Wow, that's we could be here a while. Yeah, and I know it's challenging in my experience, and I know Pete and Mark, I'm sure, will agree with me on this. It's really tough to decide like the metric you're going to focus on, measuring it properly, ensuring it's accurate, ensuring it's precise as well. So seeing a conversion rate between 2 and 5%, I think in general is really tough, because we want to, as marketers, kind of slice and dice that a little bit further, right? What's my demo request forms conversion rate? What's my download conversion rate? What's my sign up conversion rate? What's the conversion rate at every stage of the product led growth funnel in our business, whatever it is? But the things that I see most working with our clients at Refine Labs and just in general in the B2B space is just to focus on the wrong metrics, right? And the metrics that don't necessarily drive close one revenue, which was what I'm sure your CEO and your board of directors really cares about. So yeah, I'll kind of leave it there, and I'm curious to hear what Mark and Pete have to say about this topic as well.
It's a great point, Eric. We hyper focus on pipeline and revenue as a marketing team. Everything's in service of those two things, in partnership with our sales team. To me, it comes back to focus. I think marketers, we tend to focus on the channel or the content, and you can do personalization related type things in those places, in your content, in the channel, so like ads, email, etc. But then what are all those things trying to do? They're trying to get people to your website. And at the end of the day, how much personalization are you focused on doing when it comes to the conversion, right, of all of that activity, all of that, demand gen, as it relates to trying to turn demand gen into demand capture? So I think that's really the big crux of it, where like you're thinking through your marketing strategy and budget and ask yourself, how much time am I spending across my marketing strategy on the channel stuff, on the content stuff, on the community building, versus like really like how much time am I spending trying to get someone who's coming to my website that might be in or out of market, that might be a qualified buyer, and trying to make that experience better to match how they got to the website and where they are in the buying journey to then get them to the sales team. Like to me, like that's when I talk to a lot of marketers, they actually don't spend enough time doing that. So that's a crux of the problem as well. And from like our B2C life, Pete, we have a lot of expectations in making that, or we've experienced a very seamless kind of approach in a lot of our B2C kind of consumer lives now. So there's like a mismatch in what's going on when we are trying to buy from another business.
Yeah, and I think, Sam, if I were to add to Mark and Eric's points, I think going a different angle. One, it's around messaging. By the way, I think, quick disclaimer, every organization, no matter where they are in maturity, is constantly going through this struggle to increase your conversion rates, reducing bounce rates. So like, please, if you're sitting here listening and being like, shit, I got a lot of work ahead of me, you're not alone. We all go through it. But one, it's messaging. Think about, are you using too much branding, like in market branding, like jargon? Are you using terms people don't understand? And we can talk about like ways to make sure you're addressing this. But when you're trying to personalize, sometimes when you try to personalize for specific audiences, or you're just trying to personalize the overall web experience, you can very quickly fall victim to using terms or messaging that you just think people understand or resonate with. And that's not necessarily always the case. So I will always challenge marketers on testing your messaging and kind of making sure your messaging is landing. I would say also, are you answering common objections or objections that your customers experience, right? So like to Eric's earlier point around driving conversion rates, which is the ultimate goal, whether that's high intent on like a demo or contact sales, or maybe it's a softer secondary goal, like, getting people to sign up for your newsletter. If you fail to address the objections and clearly articulate your value and your value prop, people aren't going to convert. And it seems obvious, but I'm sure Mark and Eric could agree, a lot of websites out there, probably the vast majority, this is a constant struggle. And, even for, Alice, this is an ongoing journey for us. Like we're trying to constantly test the messaging, trying to improve conversion rates, trying to make sure that we're delivering and people understand that message. So those would be a couple of additional points I'd add to Mark and Eric.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to drill more into personalizing the messaging. And something that Mark mentioned that is we spend a lot of time getting people back to the website. So how do you make sure that when that qualified buyer shows up, we engage with them in the most relevant, helpful way possible? How do we have the most personalized website experience in B2B, be that messaging or whatever? Mark, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Eric and Pete pretty quickly, because I'm technically not a demand gen marketer. I definitely help with demand gen. And the reason why I'm going to turn it over so much is like my instinct is, in what we do and what we did at HubSpot, so we do this at Drift, we did at HubSpot, is like we try to identify who's coming to the website. It's like you have to like always start with the audience, like who's actually coming to the website. Like you can do that in your email system because you know who it is. You can a lot of the times do that through ads now using a variety of data sources, intent data, etc. And now you can do that for your website. So that's the key. Like, are you identifying the people who are coming to your website? Unknown, known, returning, sales engaged, target account, customer, advocate. Those are some of the highest level buckets I would think of you trying to put people into. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to turn it over to Eric and Pete. Like, what do you think? Do you think identification is a really important piece to then, to your point, Pete, which I agree with, changing your value prop, changing the messaging?
Yeah, I think the first piece, and then we can kind of go into like personalization tech and all that lovely stuff, because that in of itself, you could probably spend a webinar on, session on. But, first and foremost, agree. Like identification of your audience is critical, but there's a step that comes before that, which is actually putting the work in to understand your audience. And I don't want to like spend too much time on this, Sim, but spend the time talking to your customers, getting on, whether you use a Gong or a platform like that, listening to customer calls, doing research. There's tools out there that allow you to do message testing on your website, on landing pages, on the conversion. I highly stress, spend time, regardless of what your role is in marketing, understanding your audience and your customer first. And then to Mark's point, there are tools out there that can enable you to understand traffic and start to provide you the ability to personalize elements, whether those are content experience platforms. There's tools like Drift or other chat options that allow you to personalize and notify, hey, Eric, I see that you're from Refine Labs. Like, how can I help you, right? Like simple things that can give off that personalized experience. But do not forget the most critical part, which is spending time first with your audience, understand their needs, because that enables you to make sure that you're providing the right messaging, you're addressing objections, you're clearly articulating that value. Because if you don't get those things right, guys, like I don't care what tech stack you have. I don't care if you have Drift, no offense, Mark. I don't care if you're the cheapest platform out there. I'm going to likely go to a site and to an organization that better communicates that value and helps you understand how you solve my problem, regardless of how great your tech stack is. Like, don't assume technology will solve for foundational marketing. So
I love
sending
that.
someone a poorly worded letter is equivalent to sending someone a poorly worded phone call, right? The phone call just happens faster. I'm with Mark and Pete on this. I want to point out this number here, 10. If you're not on a first name, no by Zoom face basis with 10 of your customers and you're in demand gen marketing, I mean, that's 1 a month and you take 2 months off. Like, you absolutely must be talking to your customers and getting to know them on a personal basis to understand what their real problems and challenges are, for all the reasons that Mark and Pete said, right? For copywriting, for understanding what messages are going to be important. Even for, to Pete's point, sorry, there's services out there now that will help you test messaging, but what message are you going to send them to test, right? You need to understand who's buying your products and services and what problems they're trying to solve. Right? That's what we're here to do in business. We're just solving problems. Your software, your service, whatever it is, you're just solving someone else's problem when you sell it to them. I'm buying something because it solves a problem that I have. And so understanding what the problem is, how we got there, why the company has it, what the path to solution was, but also the really in-depth stuff that you can ask in a conversation once you build some trust. Who else did you look at? What other vendors did you talk to? What was their pricing like? I mean, you can ask a lot of things to someone who you build a friendship with. And so 10, if you're not on a first name Zoom face basis with 10 of your customers, I mean, you're probably not trying at that point. So take 2 months off of the year, to take 60 days to get started. And then in 2022, go and talk to 10 of your customers, and you're going to learn so much about them through a 1-hour phone call every few months that it would be probably really surprising. After that, to Mark and Pete's point, weaponize everything. There's lots of tech out there that allow you to do whatever you need to do, and the vendors will show you how to get the most out of it.
That makes a lot of sense. Get to know your audience first. I love that. Is something y'all mentioned is the role that tech plays in this. Where does tech play a role in personalization? Pete?
I mean, it helps enable it. So I guess if we're me and I was at a earlier stage organization, I'm trying to figure out like what's the first step in how I can start to deliver maybe more personalized experiences for either target accounts, customers, my target audience as a whole. I'd likely start with a tool like a Drift or a tool like Drift. No offense, Mark, where Drift integrates with other platforms like Clearbit, so it helps you reveal audiences that are coming to your site. You can serve up prompts based on time on site, right? So you can help. Why I like tools like Drift in one sense is it enables you to do some easier levels of personalization without having to buy other tech platforms like I don't want to throw out names. I'm just going to call it the content experience platform marketplace, where there are tools that enable you to like customize resource hubs and centers for like specific personas or firmograph. Like, so I guess if I were stepping back, the first thing I would say is there's categories that technology allows you to personalize for. One, it's around firmographic data, right? So anything from like job title, persona, like things of that nature, company size. And now there's demographic. You can, technology allows you to personalize for that type of stuff if that matters. There's contextual. So that, a good example I think was what Mark was talking about earlier, where if I know someone came to my site and they bounced back and now I'm serving up retargeting ads to try to get them back to my site, you can serve up experiences that are more contextually based on different behaviors and actions that have taken place. And then there's, behavioral as well. So, and those two are kind of intertwined. But so when I think about technology, I first, like my perspective first goes to what am I trying to personalize for? And then I look at the different tech options out there. And typically I start with chat options. And we're going to talk more about chat, I believe later on. So I have some really strong opinions about it. But I am very bullish on tools like Drift for the reason that it allows you to help personalize. It helps give you some of that insight that Mark was speaking to earlier. And it helps people navigate a site. And sites often, especially these days, can be very complex and hard to navigate. So I'm bullish for those reasons. I would probably advise you start there and then start to look at other platforms or technology as needed, if that helps. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to see what you're personalizing for and then finding the tech options that make sense there. Do you have anything to add, Eric or Mark?
Mark, I certainly do. And I'm going to speak to Drift specifically because Mark's here and, we have someone from Drift here. So in a previous role of mine, and with current clients, they use it, but in my previous role as a director of Dimension, I use Drift. And you asked about the easiest place to start. And one of the easiest places that I feel to start is to start the personalization process after you already know who the person is. Because it's much easier to do it that way. And platforms like Drift, as soon as you get the email, they'll enrich everything behind the scenes. And then your bot playbooks or whatever will allow you to say, hey, first name now becomes, hey, actual first name, hey, whatever, right? And so that's what we did. So the baby steps, we took a crawl, walk, run approach with Drift. And our crawl to walk was, let's just make a form change for an event registration. And it went from you fill in a form and you just got like the stale thank you for registering page as a thank you to I'd love to get you registered. What's your email address? Enter email address. Oh, hey, are you Eric? Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm such and such bot. All right, it's really nice to meet you here, and I can't wait to register for your event. And all of a sudden now, this may seem like ridiculous as I'm saying it to you, but there is lots of primary research, I'm sure folks at Drift have some of it, that show the psychological changes that will take place in the average person when they start communicating with a chatbot as a human being, right? As an anthropomorphic version of another human on the other side typing their responses. And that's why Drift has things like the little 3 dots, waiting as it looks like they're typing. It's not because they need to put a delay in an automatic AI response tool. It's because we feel more comfortable engaging with technology that way. And so again, the only point I wanted to really reinforce here is because I did use Drift for this, is that we took this approach in that trying to get moving with personalization is not mean changing the front page of the website to say, hi, Eric, your company can't wait to work with you. It's more of like, okay, just like, let's take a form off the page, replace it with a more interactive experience that does use personalization. And then as you get your feet wet, you'll start to see more and more of how you can enable the technology to do a heavier lift. But to Pete's point, there's vendors out there now that will go into your Salesforce, identify people, identify company, person, human, cookie, whatever, and then start to serve like an entire version of your website. With things like color palettes changing and logos changing just based on the company that person is visiting from. So lots of available tech out there.
Appreciate the kind words, Pete and Eric. I gotta send you a gift. So tell me something in the chat that you like. But for me, it's definitely everything you folks said. Of course, to me, a lot of it comes down to insights. How can you do some of the things that Pete said and you said, Eric, around understanding who your customers are, through the power of scaling your insight collection. So to us, it's like, well, the power of that comes through conversation. So the more conversation that someone has with your brand or business, either via Zoom or your website, in the form of a chatbot or a human, that's going to win, right? So that's why I look at Gong, right? We're a Gonged customer at Drift. We get a lot of insights. You know, if you use Drift on your website, you get a lot of insights. We've had 3.5 billion conversations have happened on the Drift platform in 2021. 3.5 billion. That's first-party intent data that you can then look into and find out, and you can search with a tool we have, like based off of which conversations resulted in you booking a meeting. Okay, let's find out which pages resulted in that. Let's find out what types of conversations resulted in that, and let's find out like the opposite of that, right? So like going down to like the data level of like understanding the conversion point is one thing with these insights, but also like who it is, right? One of my favorite questions to ask, this was actually back in HubSpot days. I recommend it to anyone who uses FormStill, and FormStill are, I think, a good thing to use, by the way. We can talk about that. We can debate that. And anyone who uses something like chat, what is your biggest challenge? Or like, you know, like what is most important to you? Something contextually relevant, specific to your solution. You're going back to the pain and problem. You ask that question, you can then, with even just simple branching, doesn't even have to be really, you know, AI based. You can guide someone to the right piece of content, to the right kind of next step, to the next answer. And that's all we're trying to do, I think, with our personalization efforts is like engage with the person in the most personalized way. You both gave great examples of that. Understand a little bit more about who they are and the situation they are in today, and recommend the next best action. And you give people options of how to do that. Some people might want to do it through messaging and chat. Some people might want to do it through a form. People want to still do by email or even phone. So you really do need to actually empower on your website all those communication channels to maximize demand capture, if you will. But like to me, I just go back to the insights because like that's where the gold actually does lie too.
That's awesome. If it makes sense, I'd love to transition into lead routing and qualification, and just how do you even get started optimizing that for your site? Eric, let's start with you.
Oh, I have no idea. Let's have a general conversation about this. How do you get started optimizing qualification and then the routing of? So I mean, there's ways you can do this too, right? You can qualify off the website inside of your CRM platform. There's lots of ways that the qualification process can take place. And you know, in chatting with Pete before, one of the things that I'm sure he wants to reinforce here, as mentioned earlier, is that there's a lot of different systems out there. Most likely, every single person on here has their own unique system that's been set up inside of their business, and nobody's here to beat up on the system or platforms or tech stack that you have in place. I can certainly appreciate working with a number of clients in a full book here, Refine Labs, that everybody's setup is different when it comes to routing and qualification, and that you have to work inside the boundaries of all of them and then work to improve them over time, right? Whether it's tweaking the qualification scoring algorithms or whatever it is. The point that I will make, because we were talking about the website initially, is that I think there's a piece of it in regards to buyer enablement, in that we want to take as much friction as possible down and allow those people to qualify themselves out before initiating a conversation with your sales team. I think in my experience as a demand marketer, I have done my fair share of introducing the wrong people to the sales team with the best of intentions. And so, you know, it's not necessarily everybody that comes to the website needs to be routed directly to an account executive immediately for a high level call. And it's just kind of the way it is. Some people won't be able to afford it. They don't have the budget or authority or whatever it is. There's lots of reasons why. So qualification has come up as a technology piece, as a thing that we do as part of marketing. But for me personally, again, starting on the website, by making the buyer experience as great as it can be, by removing all the friction possible, by enabling all of the learning, by building trust with that visitor, and by giving them everything, you know, soup to nuts, give them a pricing page with actual pricing on it, those types of things. That will allow that visitor to help understand whether or not you're going to be a fit for them. I know, again, that's not going to work perfectly for all industries. That's not the type of place that some people need to prove value through having those direct sales conversations, and that's why they squeeze folks into that type of funnel, and that's okay. But for what I try and like to do is get as much of the self-qualification piece out up front and allow that person to say, you know what, this is logical for me. I would like to take the next step and engage with the sales team, because those conversations in our data and our experience tend to lead to much higher conversion rates, much higher contract values, and much lower sales cycles, which is what's really important for us.
Yeah, I think if I could echo off a point like this idea of reducing friction. So I won't name who on Eric's team told me this the other day, but I had a conversation with someone on the Refine Labs team, and a benchmark that they share with me is roughly 7 to 8% of your total demo requests, like in terms of total, like a benchmark, you'll be like that. Consider that good in terms of conversion to revenue. So 90+% of the people that are raising their hand and saying, I have interest, I want to learn more about your product, are not converting to revenue. So the idea of helping self-qualify and removing all the friction, like let's not undersell that for anyone that's listening to this, or Sam, like that first and foremost, 100%. And there's ways to do that, right? Based on some of the stuff we talked about earlier, nailing your value prop, addressing objections up front. Some companies are tackling this by sharing on-demand versions of demos, or making the ability to actually see products before you request like a live consultation or a live version of a demo tailored to you. So those are some strategies. I think the other thing I would share before I hand it over to Mark would be something as a pet peeve for me is provide a preferred communication method. So like there's nothing worse than you land on a website or feel like you're calling your credit card company if you're going to go more to like the consumer side, and they force you into like an automated call tree, or like you're on hold waiting for some virtual bot, and then like you have to repeat yourself 57 times because the virtual bot has no idea what you're saying. I hope you've all experienced that, because it's actually, I really hope none of you experience, because it's the most miserable experience of all time. So if someone wants to chat live, give them that option. If they're okay with a chat bot strategy, great. That's cool too. If I fill out a request to contact someone, allow me to choose the preference. And again, I say this, as I alluded to up front, that even within the company I work at today and past companies I've been in, we're still trying to perfect this too. So I'm not saying anyone's perfect at this, but provide communication mechanisms that people want. Like I can't stress this enough. That is friction point numero uno, and most businesses get that wrong. And again, I don't want to speak for anyone else on this panel, but there's nothing worse than automated call trees and shit like that. That stuff is awful. So
yeah, no, I agree. We do two things at Drift. We have a firmographic score and a behavior score. Right, so some of this we try to do invisibly to people coming to our website. So, firmographically, it's like, what size company are you? What do you use for a tech stack? Where you're located? And we either add points or deduct points from that score. So that's one aspect. So that kind of like, again, like we don't believe in gating really anything. So like everything's open and free. It's just completely frictionless. But we need to do something to help us understand who is most important. So with this firmographic score, then we have more like the behavior score, which is based off of both primary intent, like what are they actually doing, like on the website, in our emails, and what types of engagements are those. But then we also use a technology. There's technology, we'll name it 6 Sense. Great solution if you're looking to kind of level up, if you're going from like the crawl to walk phase and walk to run, and use third-party data as part of that behavior score. And then that's, again, just going to help us understand, hey, should we try to engage this visitor on the website in a faster, even more personalized way, because we know they fit into our ideal customer profile from a firmographic standpoint, and we know that they're in market, and we know they're looking at us and other competitors. Hello, salesperson. Like, let's enable you, to your point, Eric, to like engage in the most friendly way, like the most personalized outreach possible. And that actually might not be live during the website necessarily. It could be, but it could also just be like as an email follow-up or as the LinkedIn follow-up, right? So I think it's imperative that you think about not only the front-end systems you're using to personalize, but the back-end systems.
Yeah. And then, Sam, I know you asked about lead routing, so I'm happy to start here because I've had experience working in the big entities and now the little entities. First and foremost, I know Eric and I were chatting about this the other day. I don't want to sit here and critique any organization's lead routing rules, because having been a part of big organizations with really complex sales organizations where you have really specialized sales forces, and we all get it. We understand why, to some degree, lead routing can be very complex. Instead, what I want to urge everyone, first and foremost, is kind of, I think, an overarching theme for this entire session, and that is, you want to drive more conversions on your website or ultimately more sales for your business, you have to put the customer first. And when it comes to lead routing, speaking for those past organizations where I would talk to customers, the common complaint I would often hear is, I got handed off 5, 6, 7, however many times it required before I actually got to somebody that knew the right questions to ask or was able to give me the demo of your product or whatever it might be. So again, I'm not here to critique and say you should have a BDR team or you shouldn't have a BDR team or you should have BDRs that take all your inbound. Like, I think it's always going to be different for every organization, but I would strongly encourage you to go through your sales process. Ideally, act like a customer, pay some of your friends or figure out some way to test your sales process. Identify all those points of friction. Things like how many times you're handing somebody off, because there's enough stats out there that show you, right? First and foremost, if depending on how long it takes you upon someone submitting a form or chat to request a demo to the point that they actually hear from you, there's a huge drop off right then and there. And then every time you're handing someone off, I think we'd all be a little crazy to assume that if you keep handing me off, I'm going to be interested in doing business, right? Like if that's the welcome mat to what it's going to be like to be a customer of yours, I don't think many people are going to want to sign up. So I would strongly urge at least to experience that for yourself and figure out if there's ways that you can improve that experience. Because again, that is like opening the door to doing business with you. And first impressions matter. Like treat this like a date. And no offense, I'm not sure that that's the first impression you want to leave at if you're trying to date someone. So.
Yeah, I love that concept of, removing yourself from your own sales process and asking, how you can best help the customer. Is there anything that folks on the call can do? Like, what are some tips around assessing their own process today to see if to test it?
I mean, one thing for me around this topic of lead routing is like, you can't do lead routing well without being very much in partnership with your sales team. So like we have like literally like weekly stand-ups with our different business unit leaders from a marketing and sales standpoint. And we're looking at the SLAs and it's almost like velocity. I think of it as like the quantity and then the conversion rates and then the velocity, right? You have to have kind of like a dashboard to measure all those things. And what we're talking about with lead routing, I really believe it's partially conversion rates and then partially velocity. So when you think about your sales folks, it's like, what's their feedback on the leads? Like, especially your SDRs or BDRs. And like, it's usually like, it's either in marketing or sales. So, where those people live, and just figuring out how you can get that real-time feedback loop and then working through it together, right? Like there's no right answer. It's just coming together and talking about, hey, this lead was good. I didn't get this lead fast enough. Like the data's telling us this, but the antidotes are this. Like it's such an important thing that I think, a lot of us take for granted. It was like nailed into my head at HubSpot, thanks to Dan Tyre, who invented the term smarketing, sales and marketing alignment. And we try to do it the best we can at Drift as well, but things do get complex for like no reason for some reason. So the other way that you can really personalize the experience, just a partner that you need, I think, is your operations team. And you might be a centralized revenue operations team, it might be decentralized, but the importance of having great operational support in helping you execute now typically a marketing and sales funnel that has a lot of data, that has a lot of systems involved, is going to be in some ways just as important as getting close to your customer. Because if you can't fulfill the promises and the things that you've enabled on your website or in your channels to actually come to fruition when it comes to actually trying to sell or help them buy something, then it's still a problem.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Were you going to add something, Eric?
I was going to yield the floor to Pete first, but I certainly have a little bit of color to add to this. Yeah.
Love it.
Let's go. All right. Go.
I really want to reinforce one part that Mark brought up here, because in marketing, we have two sets of stakeholders in this particular regard, this topic. We have to take care of our sales team who is a partner on our team to succeeding towards the revenue goal. Remember what Mark said, we're in service to pipeline and revenue, right? We very much are. And so is the sales team. That's their job. They're servicing that the best they can. We're also in service to the buyer. And so it does put you in a bit of a pickle. To Pete's point, there's lots of systems. There's lots of reasons a lot of things are in place, but an understanding of that experience from both sides, right? Having a very keen understanding of how sales views the process coming from marketing and how the buyer views the process coming from out from the cold is critical to making sure that you can ensure this process works as efficiently as possible for both sides. Also, in my experience, I found that when you have a healthy understanding of what the buyer experience is like for the buyer, sales is a lot more willing to bend. If you come and say, sales is giving you grief on this, and you say, oh, it's because of whatever, and you have no data, you have no anecdotes, you have no, I talked to 7 customers, we mystery shopped us, we went through this funnel, here's the average lead time, here's the average callback time, here's the demo sat rate. Like if you're not fully in tune with all of the kind of undercurrents of how this operation is working, then again the algorithms and all that type of stuff isn't going to really help you very much. You have to service the sales team as best you can in accomplishing the goals that you're all accountable for. At the same time, you want to make it the best possible buyer experience for the buyer. Otherwise, you won't get revenue from them. They'll move on to go and buy from somewhere to have a better experience. So make sure you just pay attention to both sides and don't leave one abandoned in service of the other, because they both need to work together for you to run a smooth machine.
I think a secret thing that marketers don't often look at as well that is definitely something you should be looking at is your retention rates. Like all of what we're doing in most SaaS, software as a service businesses, or subscription-based businesses is like lifetime value. Like we're trying to maximize for enterprise value and shareholder value. You're trying to maximize customer lifetime value. So it's like that golden triangle, if you will, of those 3 things. And then, so like, how do you do that? How do you like reverse engineer that? You look at retention rates. Mark Roberge, former CRO of HubSpot, he's got some great content about this through his firm called Stage 2 Capital. And like, he talks about retention as it relates to like go-to-market fit. Like there's product market fit and there's like go-to-market fit. Like you're trying to really understand as a marketer, like how do you keep honing in on the go-to-market fit of what you're trying to do? Because it keeps changing, it keeps evolving, right? Like new competitors come in and the market conditions change, et cetera, et cetera. You might think your pricing's good 1 month and then you realize you're actually like pricing yourself out or whatever happens. And so then like looking at like some lagging indicators, which do take time to build up because it is retention, but having cohort-based retention models that you can look at, it's super valuable. That again, just some secret sauce that we've done. And it's like how do you actually like make that actionable? Well, you can track the history. Then you can look at the customer journey, and you can see, well, how did those people become customers, and what happened in the sales process. So just some things that we think a lot about that I've seen a lot of success with.
I love that. Well, I would love to know all about response time as well and what that should look like. I know that we've talked about letting the buyer choose like when they want to talk to you, but what should response time look like, and how do you optimize for it?
Should be 0. Like that. And Eric, I know, has an opinion on this too, but like Sam, let's make this question simple. When we talk about removing friction, whether you're using chat functionality, a web form, registration form, whatever you want to call it, you want to minimize and make that process as simple and easy as possible. If I want to chat with someone live, that should be seamless. If I want to do that all in my web session as it's taking place, I should have that option. Granted, if it's after hours and stuff, just be upfront, right? Be transparent and then allow for offline kind of communication. If I want to pick up the phone and dial you, not as common in SaaS, but if that's a preference and you're hearing more and more from that customers, that request, then offer up a phone number. And if I'm filling out a reg form, then give me the opportunity to choose when I'm going to get that response time. Don't expect that I'm going to wait 24 to 36 hours for someone to contact me. And then, so if you allow for that, again, there's enough stats out there. You can go find them in 5 minutes. Like for every X amount of time that passes while someone's waiting for you to quote unquote respond to them, the percentage of how many of those you lose, it's like astronomical. So the right answer is 0. Like you need to minimize the response time as much as you can. The best strategy to do that is to offer up the communication preferences that people prefer. And when you can't, just be transparent, be direct, be transparent, give them other options for communication. At least that gets them into the door, and then lets them know and provides them with as much flexibility in those communication vehicles as you can. So that would be my best guidance. But
I love that. Give them absolutely every option. Eric, do you have anything to add?
Let me be unequivocally clear on the biggest win you can take away from here right now, from what Pete just said. If you're in a business that has like a demo request or some sort of form that people fill out to contact your sales team, and you don't have the ability for the person to select the time that they want to book that and block it into their calendar, go and get that set up, and you will crush it over the next little while, because you would be maybe surprised to realize how many demos and SAT demos you've been bleeding out of your entire sales process by not making this available. It was surprising to me when I instituted it. And again, I used a chat bot vendor that may or may not be on this call with us right now to do so. But that direct meeting booking tool was a 3-digit improvement in meetings SAT, which was the biggest surprise to me. Even though we were working very hard on reducing our time, speed to lead, or reducing our time to get back to the person who filled in that I want to talk to your sales team. We were working very hard to get that down. What we didn't realize was by not allowing that person to pick when they want in their calendar because they're very busy, then we weren't even getting the meetings set up at all. So yeah, there should be no response time. I should choose the response time as the buyer, I think is a better way to put it. I know as Pete said, I'm very strongly and very passionate about this. As the buyer, I dictate the terms. That's it. I got the cash and I make the rules. And making the rules, please allow me to select when I can engage with you at a time that's most convenient for me. And rest assured, if you give me that option, it's a much higher probability I'm going to be able to make that meeting and move forward with the process.
Yep. That's what our data says. That's what the data says. So the data typically doesn't lie. The story you might tell the data, you can bend that, but the data doesn't lie usually. The other suggestion I have for everyone listening is how you set up that first line of defense team on the sales side is important to this conversation. So like for us at Drift, and again, like just take this with a grain of salt. Drift is like the sales team right now is about 100-ish people or so decently big. But we have 3 sales development teams. We have 2 people during the times they work are only engaging with people on the website, because we have so much website traffic. So you have to look at your website traffic, and you have to look at like that fact, and how many actual buyers are coming to the website. But just we also want to be like kind of best in class. So like we have 2 people like looking at the website, not to mention our support team, who also is like hyperactively looking at the website. And now we actually do have 24/7 complete support coverage. So like there's that. But anyway, then you have like an inbound and outbound team. How do you actually enable your inbound team? I don't think like a blended model is the best. I don't think you should have like an inbound and outbound SDR. I'd actually love to get the demand gen folks' opinion on this, because I'm not the demand gen marketer, but I don't think inbound and outbound has worked from what I've seen in the past. So just having someone on the inbound side to both Eric and Pete's point, follow up with that request. If it's on a self-booking meeting request, meaning like that visitor is able to book the meeting on their own with someone, they need to respond quickly. Like, we all do this, right? Like you fill a form out or you engage in chat, and you're waiting to see how long it takes. If it's more than 5 to 30 minutes, I'm just like, what is going on? I don't know. I'm looking at another competitor most likely, or you just lost me. Like I am gone. So having a strong inbound team that's enabled and trained up is super important. And then outbound prospecting, the whole point of prospecting is you're trying to get a connect. But then if you waste that opportunity when someone does come to the website that you've been prospecting for like 3 months, and you miss the opportunity and don't have that instrumented right, like you're like, what are we doing here? We're just wasting 3 months of money and time. So to me, again, it's a team stuff. And a lot of this comes down to team training and enablement. We do have a lot of free resources about this on drift.com, just as call out, because we will give you our playbook. We have a whole Drift on Drift selling secrets book. But I'd love to know what Pete and Eric have to say about it.
Agreed. We'll just make it simple for the audience. Agreed.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, same thing. There's not much to add.
No. But this one's a
so you guys agree non a blended model, like have inbound and outbound. We
in regards to the SDRs.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very interesting. Yeah, I know that in my experience, some companies will actually name them different roles. We actually called this person the dispatcher. That was their nickname. We had a dispatcher who would field all of the inbound that was coming from the chat. Also, they answered the phone. And they did, like, this person was really in tune with everything inbound. I love that it was centralized in one human, but also it provided coverage problems as well. So it was just due to the size of the business that we had that we can only dedicate one full-time employee to it. But yeah, that person was a quote unquote sales development rep, but their job was just to make sure that you got the best, like we rolled out the red carpet for anybody who's coming in via any inbound channel. So yeah, to your point, I do think that there should be some human dedicated to providing a great buyer experience under the demand gen folks. If you don't have that person there, a really strong relationship with the sales team is required just to make sure that the sales team has like a service level agreement in place or something that you can hold each other accountable to what you're going to deliver. And if the sales team says we're going to deliver this experience, then just make sure it's getting delivered. That's all. But yeah, I'm in agreement, Mark. I think it has to be done.
Yeah, like I said, I agree. The only wrinkle, really quick, is something that like we're trying to assess too is, depending on what your sales process is, if there's numerous discovery and qualification meetings that have to take place before an actual demo, then my challenge to anyone listening is, what value is a sales development or BDR inbound rep actually doing besides kind of being like it's almost like the valet that brings your bags to your room kind of thing if you're checking into a hotel. And while I'm not trying to discourage or diminish that role, and I'm married to a seller, I have nothing but respect for sales. Marketer and a salesperson in the same house, never a fun thing. So, but as we're talking about, that's friction, right? If there's 5 or 6 handoffs before I actually get the demo thing, like it's the same issue of having too much of a response time. You're annoying people, you're frustrating them. So if I leave it with anything, again, I would challenge people and say, if it's a quick discovery meeting that leads to an actual demo being scheduled and taking place, fine. I'm supportive of it. Completely agree. If it's going to require they're just chauffeuring another discovery meeting with an actual AE who's going to do more discovery before you actually schedule a demo because the demo has to be tailored, that's where it starts getting really sticky. And I would challenge the entire organization, both marketing and sales, to assess that buyer's journey.
Good point. Good point. Looks like there's a question, Sam. Rick.
Ooh, awesome. Looks like Rick says, as a startup, we don't necessarily have the bandwidth to dedicate a team member solely to our inbound website chat functionality. We have a bot built out with logic currently fielding most of these conversations in real time. Is this better or worse than having no chat functionality at all? How do you recommend we optimize this chat functionality without a dedicated team member?
I'm going to let Eric and Pete answer that first. And in case they missed anything, I'll chime in. But they have a lot of experience, it sounds like, with this, probably more than I do.
Pete nailed it earlier with the expectation setting. So what you're referring to is what I refer to more as a conversational form experience than a chat. So a chat is there's someone who's chatting with you, right? The AI behind bots, they can chat. I don't know how much you want to loosen an AI conversation tool to do your thing, regardless of what vendor you're using, just because it can set the person a little bit astray. So if you're using a conversational form, it's like, hi, nice to meet you. I'm going to get you registered for a demo with our sales team. I think you can just word the playbook steps to make it clear that it's just gathering information. And that's how I've done it in my experience. Okay, I'd love to get you registered for this event on October 12th. What's your first name? What's your last name? Okay, great. Check your inbox. We sent it to you. Have a nice day. There isn't an expectation there's going to be the ability to have a conversation. If they type something outside of that, they can also do catch-alls. So if they type something that's not expected, it's like, oh, I'm just to let you know, I'm actually just here to register for this event, and I can connect you with someone on our team if you'd like, but there's nobody live here right now. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Pete. But in my experience, conversational form needs to be vastly different than an expected chat experience, to the point where for conversational forms, we don't show the bot at the bottom. We have it hidden off the page, and it fires when you click the register now button.
Amen. Like I said, transparency. Just be transparent. I'm going to shout out Metadata.io if you're familiar. Go to that site if you're not familiar with them. I think they have bots set up exactly the way Eric described, where they ask certain qualification questions. And what I admire about what they're doing is based on your answers to some of those conversational questions, they'll actually remove you from the demo request process, which takes a lot of balls. But you know what? That's that level of helping people self-qualify, being very clear and upfront with what's a good fit, what isn't a good fit, not wasting your time. So 100% agree with Eric in terms of transparency, although Mark's the expert, so we'll defer to him. And I think metadata would be a great example for you to go to that site and just kind of look at how they've set up some of their conversational bots.
Mm-hmm. Agree with everything you folks are saying. It goes back to what Eric said. You know, if it's a qualified visitor through just automatic identification or through just a simple conversation with that like conversational experience, right? Just really quickly, you can even identify someone if they're qualified based off of email address now because of the process that runs in the background to see which company they're at. Does this company fit into your firmographic definition, your ICP, etc.? Then show the ability to book a meeting. They're like, hey, look, no one is around right now, but if you want to book a meeting with someone, here you go. Give them that option. If not, don't want to book a meeting, want to check out some more content, just get them down to the content path, right? Like even that. So it's not like, it's definitely not a human to human conversation, but it's like, it's a personal assistant, if I will, right? It's like recommending that next best action. So that requires a little bit more like configuration of we call them like Drift playbooks to Eric's point, but it can continue to increase your overall conversion rate and engagement rate of your website, which is ultimately what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get more touch points, build more trust as a brand through those interactions. So yeah, spot on.
I love this. Well, we're getting toward the end of our time, so I would love to do like a rapid fire, quick tips, like your recommendations, thoughts around the entire web experience, anything we might have missed. It could be a chance to have the debate, gated content or not gated content, form or no form, anything. It can be fun here.
So when we first chatted about this, when the topic of response time came up, Pete noticed the double entendre of response time, whether it's the response time of your website or the response time of your team getting back to someone who had submitted some request for information or contact. I wanted to bring it back to the response time of your website because I think this is critical and very important. And I was having a conversation with a colleague about this yesterday. So there's a tool, it's called Google Page Speed Insights. It's Google Lighthouse, I think, if you're using Chrome in the developer tools menu. If your website is not passing the core web vitals assessment on mobile and desktop, you need to fix that immediately, ASAP. That is a huge priority for you. It's going to start to destroy your organic search rankings and your paid traffic from Google search will be affected as well. They, in theory, put it into effect in like May of this year, but as far as I know, it's been starting to like really put the clamps down on folks. All I know is if your site loads slowly, I'm gone. I got what is this iPhone 13 million 120 hertz refresh rate? This thing's operating at way faster than I can think. And if your site is slow loading on it, I got way better things to do with this distraction machine here. So I just wanted to bring it back because Pete noted it. And I thought, hey, you know what? It's a nice double entendre. Your site does need to respond really fast. So make sure that your plumbing doesn't have clogs in that.
Yeah, and on that point, Sam, like not, even as a demand marketer or Eric, like I'm not a web expert. So you may be part of a small marketing team. You might be a marketing team of one. There are plenty of web developers out there that you can hire for a couple hours who can help you address this. And I would strongly encourage that. There's a lot of technical stuff when it comes to site loading times, like the number of HTTPS requests and all these things that can slow your site down that I know about them at a high level, but they get into way too technical complexity for even myself. So I raised that the other day, but my guidance to everyone would be, if you have a web development team, great. Spend time with them. Do what Eric said, like get to know what your site load times are. If you don't, go on a site, go find a contractor who can just do some web development work for you and help you track these speeds and help identify what might be slowing your site down and work aggressively to increase your response time. Because what he said is absolutely spot on. Absolutely.
Anything to add, Mark?
No, +1 to all that as a content person. And yeah, definitely ungate content. So there's a whole other conversation we could have about like membership experiences. We're trying to create a membership experience at Drift. Much more to come on that very soon. But if you're going to have a point of friction, make it so that someone becomes a member. We call it Drift Insider. And very soon, all of our members are going to get a hyper-personalized experience when consuming all of our content in all asset formats across everything. So stay tuned. 2022 is coming soon. We're working on it. And that to me is like an okay point of friction. A one-time sign-up, kind of like a product-led growth sign-up, fine, right? we're still going to have a ton of content, ungated, completely free to find. We'll have even more content that's free and ungated because of this change, but do not get your content. I cannot stress that enough.
Agree. A couple other tips. Again, Eric and I, we spitballed a few of these the other day. Mark bailed on us. He didn't join us, but I was on another call where we were like doing a website teardown, and I spent a lot of time after that call reflecting, and a couple of things that I came away as I thought more about this. One, it's look at your site-wide navigation, and I'm going to pick on the Shopify site. They do an amazing job. Their navigation is very outcome-oriented, simple, clean, outcome-driven. If you're looking for inspiration, I strongly encourage you to go to Shopify's site, look how they set it up, and figure out if there's ways that you can make your navigation on your site clear, easier to navigate, and frankly, kind of that outcome-oriented. That's what we're all going to a site for, right? Another big one for me is readability. So again, I'm going to pick on the Shopify site because this is what kind of sparked the thought process for me. But when you go to Shopify's site, their margins are actually pulled in. So they don't take up the full screen. They actually have the indented. And at first it takes you back because you haven't probably seen that in about the last 10 years. And as I've researched it more, it's intentional. And part of why, at least my perception, it's intentional. And it's because it increases readability. So as you narrow down margins, it allows the reader and your eyes to be more focused on the content that's on the screen. And as you play with different font sizes, et cetera, it helps with overall readability on the site, which matters, right? Especially when you're reading a bunch of content on the page. So even things around design, and go and look at different sites. I mean, Shopify is a monstrosity of a website and a company as a whole. I think they're doing really interesting things with design that at first when I looked at it, I was like, I don't get it. But now as you research it more, I think it's a really interesting use case around readability, navigation, the importance of navigation. And I would strongly encourage you to look at sites like that for inspiration.
That's a great example. If you just look across the top menu, right? It's start, sell, market, and manage. What a simple, clean, and then there's like probably 100 different menu options inside of those 4 menus. But think about that: start, sell, market, and manage. It's very clear navigation and a great example. What can I add to this? So I'm very much with Mark. Ungate everything. However, as Mark did say, if you change the perception of the gate, it's amazing what will happen. And so with Insider, which is what they built, and with other stuff that I've had the pleasure of marketing in my career experience, if you just change the perception of the fact that it's an upgrade that you're achieving, and you're getting to unlock additional resources. Hey, everything around here is free, but if you want the VIP experience, it's going to cost you your email address. Now I'm willing to make a trade because I want to be part of the club. And I have a colloquialism I use with clients all the time, and that a lot of times they'll ask, "Hey, is the form too long? Do you have to take fields of the form, whatever?" And I said, "Look, if I'm going to give you a Ferrari at the other end of the form, how many fields can I get you to type in? Probably 100,000. You'll sit there for hours typing in whatever form fields I want if you're going to get $500,000 on the other side." And so it really is the value proposition towards the person filling in the form of what they're going to unlock on the other end. And if what they're unlocking is a 4-page PDF case study, I'm not even sure I'm willing to type in my email address for that, because it's just a thing. It should be given to me for free because your intention in creating it was for me to consume it. And I know that. I'm not stupid. I know that you made it so I'd read it. And so I don't have to give you anything. There's no bi-directional value exchange. You're gaining all the value by me giving you the email address. And so there must be a bi-directional value exchange there. So to Mark's point, make it the VIP experience, unlock additional things, make it really cool stuff. I think there's a lot there. The only other thing I'll add for lightning round is one of the things we've been working with our clients quite a bit lately here at Refine Labs is self-informed or self-directed attribution. So on your forms, a lot of times it's really tough to gather how people heard about you, and you're losing a lot of this information from the platforms, and cookies getting removed now, and the Pixel firing third party, all this mumbo jumbo. And so we were surprised to discover that adding an open field text box in the form that says, "How did you hear about us today?" actually gets a lot of people filling it in and really insightful information. And so that self-directed attribution is something we've shared across our clients. I know it seems a little bit weird adding a field to the form. It's an open-ended, it's not required. Who's going to fill it in? Surprisingly, a lot of people fill it in. And so you may learn a ton about where your traffic's coming from. And it may surprise you. We get stuff that's directly in from a certain ad platform. And they say, oh, I saw you here. Or I heard about you in Revenue Collective, or whatever it's called now. I heard about you on Slack, teammate member, LinkedIn chat, whatever it is. So, yeah.
I love that.
Got nothing. It's that time. Sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
No, thank you, Mark. That's great if there's any final comments. But this has been incredible. Thank you all so much. I'm really excited to get to pull some clips out of this to share around. There's so many awesome nuggets in here. Thank you all for your time. And we'll thank you to everyone who attended. And we'll see you on another live event. Thank you, Mark, Pete, Eric. It was great having you.